object, and fundamental principles. This initial section of BS 7671 lays the groundwork for the entire set of regulations by defining its scope, outlining its objectives, and detailing the fundamental principles that underpin all electrical installations. Part 1 explains if the book is relevant to a particular electrical design and how it intends to achieve its goals. 1.1 Explaining the scope of the regulations. General application. The regulations apply to the design, erection, and verification of electrical installations. This includes residential, commercial, industrial, medical, prefabricated buildings, low-voltage generating sets, outdoor lighting, caravans, onshore units for electrical shore connections for inland navigation vessels. Types of circuits. The regulations include requirements for circuits up to 1000 VAC or 1500 VDC, other than internal wiring of appliances, consumer installations external to buildings, fixed telecommunication technology, additions and alterations to existing installations. Limitations. BS 7671 does not include detailed technical requirements that may change due to technical developments. The designer should consider manufacturer's instructions. Departures. Any intended departure from these regulations requires special consideration by the designer and must be recorded on the appropriate electrical certification. Any departure from BS 7671 should not result in a less safe scenario. The regulations serve to protect persons, livestock, and property from hazards that may arise from the reasonable use of electricity. 1.2 Discussing the object of the regulations. The primary object of BS 7671 is to ensure the safety of persons, livestock, and property against the risks that may arise from the reasonable use of electricity. These risks include electric shock, thermal effects including excessive temperatures likely to cause fire, burns, injurious effects, ignition of flammable materials, overcurrent, fault currents, voltage disturbances, including undervoltages, power supply interruptions, overvoltages, arcing and burning. BS 7671 addresses both basic protection, preventing contact with live parts in normal use, and fault protection, preventing danger in the event of a fault, to ensure comprehensive safety. The regulations achieve these aims through requirements for appropriate selection and erection of equipment, protective earthing and bonding, automatic disconnection of supply in case of a fault. Installations must be designed and implemented in a way that minimizes the risk of ignition of flammable materials and provides protection against burns. This is achieved by limiting temperatures of equipment, providing adequate protection against overcurrent, selecting equipment appropriate for its location. 1.3 Covering the fundamental principles of electrical safety. BS 7671 establishes several fundamental principles to ensure electrical installations are safe. These principles aim to protect persons, livestock, and property from dangers that may arise from the use of electricity. These principles are achieved through specific protective measures and proper design. The key principles include protection against electric shock. This principle focuses on preventing dangerous electric currents from passing through a body. It involves two aspects: basic protection, preventing contact with live parts under normal conditions. This can be achieved through insulation, barriers, enclosures, or placing live parts out of reach. Fault protection, protecting against electric shock in the event of a fault. This is achieved through protective earthing, bonding, and automatic disconnection of the supply, ADS. Protection against thermal effects. This principle aims to minimize the risk of burns, fire, and ignition of flammable materials due to heat generated by electrical equipment. Measures include limiting surface temperatures, using appropriate enclosures, IP ratings, and selecting wiring systems that do not spread fire. Arc fault detection devices, AFDDs, can also be used. Protection against overcurrent. Overcurrent occurs when the current exceeds the rating of a cable, device, or accessory. This principle involves protecting against both overload currents, excessive current in an electrically sound circuit, and fault currents. high currents resulting from a fault condition. Protection is achieved through the selection and coordination of appropriate protective devices, such as fuses and circuit breakers. Protection against voltage disturbances. This principle addresses issues caused by overvoltages, from atmospheric or man-made sources, and undervoltages. Measures include surge protection devices, SPDs, to limit overvoltages and undervoltage protection to prevent equipment damage from voltage dips or losses. A risk assessment should be performed to determine the need for transient overvoltage protection. These fundamental principles are interconnected and should be considered holistically during the design, erection, and verification of electrical installations. Compliance with these principles is essential to ensure the safety of people, livestock, and property. 1.4 Emphasizing skilled design and adherence to manufacturer's instructions. Achieving electrical safety relies heavily on competent design and correct installation practices. BS 7671 stipulates that electrical installations should be designed by skilled persons. A skilled person should have adequate education and training to avoid danger at all times. This ensures that the design accounts for all relevant factors, including the intended use of the installation, the characteristics of the electrical supply, external influences, maximum demand and diversity, appropriate selection of equipment. Designers must exercise reasonable skill and care. The regulations also highlight the critical importance of following manufacturer's instructions during installation. This includes using equipment in accordance with its intended purpose, mounting and enclosing equipment correctly, ensuring correct connections and terminations, considering thermal cycles and temperature ratings. Deviation from manufacturer's instructions can compromise the safety and performance of the installation. In addition, every item of equipment should comply with the applicable British or harmonized standard appropriate to the intended use of the equipment. 1.5 Explaining the significance of recording departures from the standard. While BS 7671 provides a comprehensive framework for electrical installations, there may be instances where a departure from the regulations is considered necessary or desirable. Any intended departure from BS 7671 requires special consideration by the designer. It is essential that any such departure is properly documented and justified. Recording departures. Any departure from the regulations must be recorded on the appropriate electrical certification specified in Part 6. Maintaining safety levels. It is paramount that any departure from BS 7671 does not result in a reduced level of safety. The resulting degree of safety of the installation shall be not less than obtained by compliance with the regulations. This means that the designer and installer must carefully assess the potential impact of the departure and implement measures to mitigate any increased risks.